Alafia, Herunefer, Kerunefer, peace and blessings. Denader, you're tuned into the African Ancestral Manuscript Jellyba channel. The Jellyba is right here. The Jellyba is the storyteller. The Jellyba is the one who makes the king, or the queen. Because the king and the queen have a tendency to deviate and to forget who they were, get carried away by the ego, or get carried away by deviancy into doing things which are not for the common good. The griot, or the Jellyba, appears to remind the queen and the king of their greatness, that they descended from the greatness of yesteryear, so that they can replicate that greatness in this year and years to come, and understand that it's bigger than they are. It's bigger than you. It's about us. It's about the ancestors. It's about our children. It's about those who have come and gone, those who have yet to be born, and those who are coming back into the universe and the planet. It's a cyclical thing. Life is not terminal and linear. It's cyclical. We come into the plane of the living. We go into the plane of the ancestors. We come back into the plane of the living. And we want to create for ourselves, when we are coming back and returning, a future and a destiny which is worthy of living truth and worthy of uplifting us to a divine plane of existence. Drawiniter. Today we are going to explore some more ancestors. Once again, the African Ancestral Manuscript has come to life, and all the stories of people, experiences, which you need to take and put into your pocket and employ when you are in these situations. Remember, Hannibal was able to climb the Alp mountains, the tallest mountains in Europe, with the elephant. Okay? Remember all the great deeds. Mansa Musa, how he was able to make his pilgrimage and also to be the one of the genesis of the great Mali. Before him, there was Abu Bakr, who actually left Mali before Columbus and reached the shores of America to explore. Greatness is within our genetic line, and in our ancestral quest, we will discover our greatness. Today, we're going to get into a story. On va vous raconter une petite histoire aujourd'hui. And that story is going to be powerful. It's one more of the ancestors that adorns my wall, and I see every morning in the centerpiece of my house. We're going to talk about him because he was born in April. Sorry, he was born in May. Sorry, we're in May. Excusez-moi. These European months just fly by so quickly. But he was born in May, and he was a great man who was also a polymath. We have lots of polymaths in this book. Our genius cannot be contained. It's got to go across different borders and different boards. Today we're going to talk about Martin Delaney. Martin Delaney, he was quite a genius, and he claimed his descendants from African royalty. Let's see who he was. Before we do that, as we say, eel. Ow. Ow. Wandeya MartinDelaney Bindi. Born May 6, 1812, in Charlestown, Virginia, U.S., and died 24th of January, 1885 in Xenia, Ohio. He was an African-American abolitionist, physician, and editor in the pre-Civil War period. His espousal of black nationalism and racial pride brought forward expressions of such views a century later. In a search for quality education for their children, the Delaneys were a family descended from African royalty. So they came from kings just like we do. Descended from African royalty. They moved to Pennsylvania when Martin was a child. At 19, while studying nights in the African American church, he worked days in Pittsburgh. Embarking on a course of militant opposition to slavery, he became involved in several racial improvement groups. Under the tutelage of two sympathetic physicians, he achieved competence as a doctor's assistant as well as in dental care, working in the capacity in the South and the Southwest in 1839. Returning to Pittsburgh, Delaney started a weekly newspaper, The Mystery, which publicized grievances of blacks in the United States and also championed women's rights. He was championing women's rights way before this was popular. You see, he was definitely a man in advance of his age. The paper won an excellent reputation, and its articles were often reprinted in the white press. From 1846 to 1849, he worked in partnership with the abolitionist leader Frederick Douglass. And we know Frederick Douglass, who say there's no progress, without struggle there's no progress. Remember, Frederick Douglass said that. In Rochester, New York, where they published another weekly, the North Star. Remember, the North Star guided lots of our enslaved Africans out of bondage into the North to free themselves and into Canada as well. After 3 years, Delaney decided to pursue formal medical studies. He was one of the first blacks to be admitted to Harvard Medical School and became the leading Pittsburgh physician. So he was in Harvard. He was quite an intellectual person. He was quite an enthralling speaker as well. In the 1850s, Delaney developed an overriding interest in foreign colonization opportunities for African Americans. And in 1859-1860, he led the exploration party to West Africa to investigate the Niger Delta as a location for settlement. So he wanted to go back. He wanted to go back home, just like Thomas Peters did. He wanted to go back to Africa to do something positive. We all need to see our mother Africa at least once in our existence and do something meaningful there. In protest against oppressive conditions in the United States, Delaney moved in 1856 to Canada. So he was partly African Canadian. He was living in Canada. He continued his medical practice. At the beginning of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, he returned to the United States and helped recruit troops for the famous 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, for which he served as a surgeon. So he didn't just recruit people. He didn't just talk about the pudding. He didn't just build the pudding. He was part of the pudding, right? To counter the separate Southern scheme to impress its enslaved Africans into the military forces late in the war, in February 1865, Delaney was made major, the first black man to receive a regular Army commission and to be an officer in the U.S. Army. So he was the first black man to be an officer in the U.S. Army, and it was for a great cause, to free other Africans. And he was also assigned to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, to recruit and organize former enslaved Africans for the North. When peace came in April, he became an official in the Freedmen's Bureau, serving for the next 2 years. In 1873, Delaney became a customs inspector in Charleston and was an active supporter of the Liberian Exodus, where the African Americans went back to Liberia to establish Liberia, Monrovia, and that great nation which was settled in part by African Americans. Okay, so of the Liberian Exodus, Joint Stock Exchange Company, and the organization which arranged the transport of immigrants to Liberia in 1874, Delaney ran unsuccessfully for lieutenant governor as an independent Republican in South Carolina. Thereafter, his fortunes declined. He was the author of many books. Martin Delaney transitioned to the ancestral realm in Wilberforce, Ohio, on 24th of January 1885. He was an African pioneer who stayed true to his dignified royal lineage. So he stayed true to that royal lineage. Remember, he came from royalty, just like many Africans who had come from royalty and who had been uprooted from our continent and taken to the Americas to be enslaved, tortured, and kidnapped. But he was able to rise out of that muck and the mire to make of himself a great servant of justice and peace, equality, and somebody who was willing to fight in the Herakuti cycle for the cause of justice. His cause was the African emancipation from enslavement, and that's why he went to war. And we got to emancipate right now, as Elder Ancestor Bob Marley said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Only yourself can free your own mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop at the time. Yes, straight up. That seems like what Martin Delaney as well would have said. And we'd like to give thanks to Martin Delaney for having had the audacity to be great when mediocrity was being pushed to our people. having the audacity to fight against injustice wherever it stood and not be enslaved, to be a doctor, to be a writer, to be a doctor and a writer, as well as a military soldier, as well as an officer, when it was usual for Black people to be denigrated, desecrated, and disenfranchised. Peace and blessings to that great ancestor. May his energy continue to inspire us to grow and to be divine and to be great. Dans la mémoire de Martin Delaney, je vous remercie de nous avoir écoutés. Story 15, Story Go. He left by you and me for tell the story of Martin Delaney. Don't forget to tell your children about your great African ancestors. Don't waste their time telling them about all types of things which are untrue and denigrating and desecrating them by telling them they were nobody when actually they were everybody. They were every single body, and they were enlightened bodies that enlightened other bodies. So let's take that to our spirit, into our heart, meditate on it. And from the African Ancestral Jellyba channel, African Ancestral Manuscript Jellyba channel, I'd like to say peace and blessings to one and all. I'd like to say Odabo, Lala Salama. I'd like to say Denader. I'd like to also say, in the many traditions of the African continent, Keru Nefer, which means have a peaceful rest and a peaceful evening. And the blessings may be abound to your person and to your families as you chart your path as African futurists, connecting with the African past and using Sankofa to use the past and the greatness of yesteryear to project yourself into a brighter, effervescent future. Ashe, 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 Ashe.